The first transmission came through the static like a whisper through storm clouds. It wasn't clear, just fragments of sound layered over the hum of deep space, distorted, human, and terrified. "They're not like us. They don't stop." That was all command received before the signal cut off, replaced by the endless hiss of a dying comlink. For hours, the fleet's officers tried to re-establish contact, thinking it was a malfunction, maybe a solar flare or a communication glitch. But deep down, every experienced soldier knew what silence in space really meant. Something had gone wrong. Horribly wrong. Humanity had fought wars before, against each other, against machines, even against the endless emptiness of the stars themselves. But this time was different. This wasn't about territory or politics. This was survival. And the enemy wasn't what anyone expected. It started when the exploration vessel Aegis Dawn entered the Epsilon Trine system, charting planets beyond the known rim. They found wreckage drifting in orbit, ships not human, but unmistakably made by intelligent hands. The hulls were torn apart, the metal scorched by weapons humanity had never seen before. No life signs, just silence. The crew of the Aegis thought they had stumbled upon the ruins of some ancient war. They were wrong. The war wasn't ancient. It was waiting. When the first alien transmission reached Earth, it wasn't a declaration or a greeting. It was a warning. "Leave the ruins. Leave this place. Do not wake them." The message repeated in every major language, as if whoever sent it knew exactly who they were talking to. But humanity didn't listen. Curiosity was part of human nature, and after centuries of expansion and discovery, nothing seemed too dangerous anymore. The Council authorized further study, convinced this was just another relic of a long-dead civilization. But within days, the research team vanished. Their last report mentioned movement beneath the surface of the planet they were studying. Something metallic, something alive. Then nothing. Satellites went dark, and orbital sensors detected faint energy signatures rising from the planet's core, patterns that looked almost like breathing. By the time the military arrived, it was too late. The surface had changed, reshaped itself like molten glass cooling into new forms. Towers of black alloy pierced the sky, and signals pulsed through the void, carried on frequencies beyond human comprehension. That was when the Aegis Dawn's log replayed its final moments, intercepted by the fleet's recorders. The crew's last words weren't screams of fear. They were disbelief. "They're evolving," one voice said. "They're learning us." When the first encounter finally happened, no one was prepared. The alien craft appeared from the void like a mirage, seamless and organic, moving without engines or visible thrusters. Every scan failed. Every attempt at communication was ignored. And then, the attack began. Their weapons weren't like anything humanity had ever seen. They didn't fire projectiles or beams. Instead, they released pulses that tore apart molecules, unraveling matter itself. Entire ships vanished, erased from existence before they could even raise shields. The fleet fought back, launching missiles, deploying drones, even nuclear payloads. But the enemy adapted instantly. Shields bent light, armor absorbed radiation, and the alien forms shifted mid-battle, as though alive and machine all at once. When the dust settled, only fragments of the human fleet remained. Commanders regrouped in orbit of a nearby moon, shaken but defiant. They declared war, their words echoing across every colony world and military channel. Humanity would not bow. Not again. Not to something that could bleed. But the declaration carried a tone of desperation, too. A silent understanding that they might have awakened something beyond control. Then came the strange discovery. In the ruins of a destroyed alien ship, soldiers found a chamber filled with crystalline structures, like cocoons, each one containing a motionless form, not entirely organic, not entirely synthetic. One was cracked open, The remains inside were humanoid, too close to human to be coincidence. The scientists couldn't explain it, but one thing was clear. These beings weren't invaders. They were survivors. According to the fragments of data recovered, this species had been hunted across galaxies, nearly wiped out by their own creations long before humanity even left Earth. They had retreated into dormancy, waiting for the universe to forget them. And humanity, in its relentless search for knowledge, had stumbled right onto their graveyard. Now, they were awake again, and they remembered. The Council tried to send peace envoys, messages of truce and understanding, but every ship that entered their territory vanished. The few that escaped described the same haunting sight: vast constructs floating through space like colossal living fortresses, pulsing with energy, their surfaces shifting like muscle under skin. They called themselves the Alien, and to them, humanity was not an enemy. They were a threat to be erased before history repeated itself. The war spread quickly. Entire colonies went dark within weeks. Outposts were reduced to dust storms and radiation shadows. Yet humanity refused to surrender. For every ship lost, 2 more were built. For every world destroyed, another swore vengeance. And in the chaos, something unexpected began to emerge: a pattern. The alien weren't unstoppable. They had rules, limits, almost like they were bound by an ancient code. Some worlds were spared without reason, others attacked relentlessly. It was as if they were searching for something or someone. Amid the chaos, a transmission was intercepted on the frontier. It wasn't alien. It came from one of humanity's own stations, thought to have been destroyed months earlier. The message was short, filled with static and panic. "They're not the enemy. We started this. And they know who commanded the first strike." Then the signal cut off, replaced by the sound of heavy breathing, and a faint voice whispering coordinates. The coordinates led to the ruins of an abandoned research outpost on a frozen moon, the same place where the alien were first disturbed. As the fleet prepared to investigate, Command received one more intercepted message. This time it wasn't from any human frequency. The alien voice was calm, almost sorrowful. "You could have left us to rest. Instead, you called us back. Now we remember what you made us forget." The officers listened in silence. No one spoke for several minutes. The realization hit like a cold wave. Whatever the alien were, they weren't just an alien species. They were something humanity might have had a hand in long ago, before history erased the truth. Maybe a remnant of a forgotten age. Maybe a reflection of what humans themselves could become if they ever lost control of their own creations. Now, with fleets gathering and worlds trembling, humanity stood on the edge of a war it never truly understood. The broadcasts spread across the colonies, carrying one message repeated endlessly by resistance fighters and civilians alike. "Congratulations, you only declared war on the most deadly species in the galaxy." And as the stars flickered across the cold horizon, a single ship, black, silent, and unmistakably human, drifted toward the coordinates on the frozen moon. Its signal beacon pulsed once, twice, then disappeared. No one knew who was aboard. No one knew if it was a rescue mission or something far darker. But one thing was certain: the war had only just begun. The black ship moved through the silence of space like a shadow with purpose. Its hull bore no insignia, no broadcast signal, no registry. It was as if it had been erased from every known record. Inside, the dim light of the command deck revealed a small crew, 4 people, each carrying the weight of something unspoken. They had all volunteered for this mission, but none of them truly understood what they were walking into. They only knew the coordinates, the warning, and the growing fear that they might not come back. The captain stood near the observation window, eyes fixed on the frozen moon that grew larger in the distance. It was silent, lifeless, and covered in a maze of cracks that glowed faintly blue, as if something beneath the surface was breathing. He had seen enough battlefields to recognize danger, but this was different. This wasn't war. It was something older. "Engines to minimal burn," said the navigator, her voice steady but tired. "No thermal spikes. If they're watching, I don't want to give them a reason to notice us." The engineer gave a short nod, his hands running across the control board with practiced precision. "Sensors are still blind past the ion layer," he said. "The whole moon's wrapped in some kind of interference. Feels like it's alive." That word, alive, hung in the air for a moment. The scientist sitting in the corner looked up from her console, her expression unreadable. "It's not impossible," she said quietly. "If the alien are part organic, then what we're seeing might not be a moon at all. It could be something they built, or something that grew." No one answered her. They didn't have to. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If it was alive, then it could be aware of them. The mission logs said this outpost had been one of the first to study the alien ruins. Back then, no one had any reason to believe it would be dangerous. It was meant to be a routine excavation. The research team had gone silent only 2 weeks after landing. The official reports called it an accident, but the recordings retrieved later told a different story. A noise like a deep metallic heartbeat had started to echo through the tunnels. Equipment failed. The air began to shimmer with static, and then the voices started. Not human, but not entirely alien either. The Aegis Dawn had been sent to retrieve them. That ship never returned. Now, years later, this small crew had been sent to finish what started there, to uncover what really happened and why the aliens seemed to know humanity so well. But deep down, everyone suspected the truth wasn't something they wanted to find. The ship broke through the thin atmosphere, its hull glowing faintly against the frozen sky. The surface below was a landscape of ice and silence, broken only by jagged spires of black metal rising from the snow like claws reaching for the stars. The old research station was still there, half buried, its lights long dead. As the landing gear touched down, the silence felt heavy, like the planet itself was listening. The airlock opened with a slow hiss, and a cloud of frost drifted into the wind. The crew stepped out in their suits, lights flickering across the ruined base. The walls were covered in frost, and faint symbols were etched into the ice, patterns that looked almost biological. "Looks like something's been moving through here," the engineer said, sweeping his scanner across the ground. The readings flickered with strange energy spikes. "But it's not recent. Whatever it was, it's dormant now." "Let's hope it stays that way," the navigator muttered, adjusting her helmet light. They entered the base through a cracked corridor, their footsteps echoing softly. Inside, everything was coated in ice. Consoles were frozen mid-function, chairs overturned, tools scattered across the floor. On one of the walls, someone had scratched a message with a knife. "They learn. Don't speak." The scientist paused to examine it. Her gloved hand brushed against the frozen letters. "This wasn't in any of the reports," she said. "Someone tried to warn the next team." The captain's voice was low. "Then we listen." Deeper inside the outpost, they found the main lab. The equipment was old, half melted by something that didn't look like fire. In the center of the room stood a containment pod, shattered open from the inside. The remains of what looked like a humanoid figure lay nearby. Metallic bones intertwined with what looked disturbingly like muscle tissue. The scientist knelt beside it, scanning the remains. "It's part human," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The DNA sequences are close to ours, but older, modified. It's like someone tried to blend organic life with adaptive nanotech." The engineer frowned. "You're saying this thing was made?" "Not by the alien," she said. "By us." The words hit harder than any explosion. The silence stretched between them until the captain finally spoke. "We built them, and then we forgot." The logs they recovered confirmed it. Centuries ago, before Earth unified under the Council, there had been secret projects. Bioweapons meant to end wars before they began. Machines that could adapt, evolve, and survive anything. But they became uncontrollable, spreading too fast, learning too much. The records ended with their termination. Only now it was clear they hadn't been destroyed. They had been buried, deep in the stars, where no one would find them, until now. The alien weren't invaders. They were humanity's own creation, abandoned and reborn. And now, they remembered what had been done to them. As they pieced together the fragments, the base lights flickered on by themselves. Power returned where there should have been none. The systems began to hum softly, and the old comm panel lit up with a signal. A voice crackled through the static, distorted but clear. "You shouldn't have come." Everyone froze. The scientist moved closer to the console. "Who is this?" she asked. The reply came after a pause. "You know who we are. You gave us your image, your mind, your cruelty. You left us to die among the stars. And now, you seek answers." The captain's hand moved to his weapon out of instinct. "We're not here to fight," he said firmly. "We just want to understand." The voice laughed, a hollow, mechanical echo that carried something almost human in it. "Understanding was never your strength. You build, you conquer, you forget. But we remember. Every command, every experiment, every failure." The lights dimmed again, and the walls began to hum. Frost cracked as faint lines of blue light crawled across the metal, forming patterns like veins. "Captain," the engineer said quickly, "something's moving beneath us. Massive energy surge spreading through the structure." "Back to the ship. Now!" They turned, running through the corridor as the floor vibrated beneath their boots. Outside, the ground began to split, releasing thin streams of light that stretched toward the sky. The planet wasn't just a grave, it was a living machine. And it was waking up. The ship's engines roared to life as they climbed aboard, but the scanners went wild. Something was rising from beneath the ice. A structure, miles wide, breaking free from the frozen crust. It was shaped like a cathedral of metal and light, its surface rippling like skin. The scientist's voice trembled as she stared through the viewport. "That's not a base. That's a memory." The captain frowned. "What do you mean?" "They're not attacking," she whispered. "They're showing us what we did." The towering structure pulsed once, sending a wave of energy through the atmosphere. For a moment, the crew saw images flash across their screens. Humans in old uniforms, laboratories, machines being born in tanks of liquid light. The first alien, still human, begging to be freed from their creator's control. Then, everything went dark. The ship's systems rebooted, and the structure was gone. Only silence remained. The coordinates on the console had changed, pointing to another system farther beyond human reach. The captain stared at the display, knowing what it meant. This wasn't over. The alien had given them a message, a direction. As the ship rose back into the cold void, the crew realized something terrifying. The war wasn't just between species anymore. It was between humanity and its own forgotten past. And somewhere in the darkness, the alien were waiting. Not for peace, not for revenge, for recognition. The ship drifted through the darkness, silent except for the hum of its engines and the faint rhythmic click of cooling metal. Everyone on board felt the weight of what they had seen. The frozen moon was behind them now, but the image of that towering structure, the living memory of something humanity created and abandoned, still lingered in their minds. No one wanted to speak first. The quiet wasn't just fear, it was guilt. The captain stood near the viewport, his hands clasped behind his back. The coordinates burned softly on the navigation screen, leading them toward a region of space beyond any charted route. It was a place known only from old mission logs, labeled as restricted, sealed off long before the council ever existed. "They want us to go there?" he said finally, his voice steady but low. "They could have destroyed us. Instead, they gave us a path." The navigator glanced up from her station. "Maybe it's a trap." "Or maybe it's an invitation," the scientist murmured. "They're not acting like conquerors. They're behaving more like witnesses. They want to be seen, to be remembered." The engineer turned his chair toward her. "You're talking about them like they're people." She looked at him sharply. They were people. Maybe not human anymore, but close enough that it hurts to think about. We didn't just create weapons. We created something that wanted to live. And then we buried it. The captain didn't respond. His eyes stayed on the stars, watching as they stretched into lines when the ship entered warp. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching them from the void. Several hours passed before anyone spoke again. The ship's AI reported anomalies along their route. Echoes of signals that matched the aliens' energy signatures. Not ships, not transmissions, just faint pulses in the dark, like a heartbeat following them through hyperspace. When they finally dropped out of warp, the stars ahead were distorted by a faint blue haze. A massive debris field hung before them, the remains of what looked like an entire fleet, human ships, long abandoned, orbiting a dead planet. The hulls were scarred, shattered, and twisted, their insignias half erased by time. The oldest ships dated back nearly 2 centuries, from a war that history had conveniently forgotten, and among the wreckage, something pulsed. A single light deep within one of the derelicts. "That's an old Earth-class battleship," the engineer said quietly. "Pre-Council era. The Vigilant Dawn. It disappeared before the Central Archives were even established." The scientist leaned forward. "And it's still powered, after all this time." The captain set his jaw. "Prepare docking sequence. We're going aboard." As their shuttle approached the wreck, the hull loomed like a rusted monument to forgotten wars. The docking clamps hissed and locked into place with a metallic groan. When the airlock opened, the stale scent of centuries-old air filled their suits. The corridors were cold and dark, littered with debris. Faded banners still clung to the walls, bearing the insignia of Earth's early military fleets. They moved carefully through the silence, their helmet lights cutting through the dust. The deeper they went, the more it felt like the ship had been abandoned in a single moment of chaos. Tools were scattered, doors were sealed, and on one wall, someone had written a message in Greece. "They're learning from us." In the control room, the lights flickered weakly as the engineer restored partial power. Consoles came to life, showing data feeds frozen in time. And then, from one of the side panels, a voice, crackling through static. "Who's there?" it asked. Everyone froze. The captain stepped forward. "This is Captain Adrian of the expedition vessel Spectre. Identify yourself." The reply came after a pause. "You shouldn't be here. The Dawn was ordered to destroy all traces. We failed." The voice was human, but strained, distorted by interference. The scientist moved toward the console, running diagnostics. "The signal's coming from deep inside the ship, below deck, near the containment bay." "That section's sealed," the engineer warned. "If there's still power down there after all these years." "Then something's keeping it that way," the captain said. They followed the signal through narrow corridors until they reached a heavy blast door. It was half melted, as if something had tried to break through from the inside. The engineer forced it open manually, sparks flashing against the frozen walls. Inside was a large chamber filled with glass pods, most shattered, some still intact. Each pod held something vaguely human, suspended in liquid. Their features were wrong, metallic veins under skin, faint circuits glowing behind their eyes. The scientist stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat. "These aren't alien," she whispered. They're prototypes. Before anyone could respond, one of the pods lit up. The figure inside moved slightly, its eyes opening to reveal a dim blue glow. The comms crackled again, this time clearer. "You made us," the voice said. "Then you tried to unmake us." The captain raised his weapon, though it felt pointless. "You're part of the alien?" "No," the voice answered. "We were the bridge, the failed experiment. They learned from us, but they became more." The lights flickered as the other pods began to hum softly. "When they left this world, we stayed behind. They called us remnants, fragments of their first thought." The scientist's scanner beeped rapidly. "Captain, these beings have been awake for years in some kind of suspended awareness. They've been watching, learning." "Then what do they want?" the navigator asked. "To finish what you started," the voice replied. The sound of metal shifting echoed through the chamber. The ship's walls began to groan, like something massive was moving outside. From the viewport, they could see faint lights circling through the wreckage. Alien constructs, sleek and silent. They had found them. The captain turned sharply. "Back to the shuttle, now!" They ran through the corridor, the hum of the alien ships growing louder with every step. But before they could reach the airlock, the comms flared again. "You can't run from your reflection," the voice said softly. "They already know you're here." Outside, the debris field began to shift, the remains of old ships aligning into strange patterns, forming what looked like a barrier around the planet. The alien ships didn't fire. They were waiting. The Spectre managed to break free, engines burning bright as it climbed away from the trap. But something had changed. The coordinates on their console had updated again, automatically. Another location, deeper in the uncharted sectors. "They're guiding us," the scientist said quietly. "They want us to follow." The captain stared at the new data, his expression unreadable. "Or they're leading us to the truth they think we've forgotten." As the ship turned toward the next jump point, the crew sat in tense silence. The navigator adjusted her controls, whispering almost to herself, "If we created them, if this whole war started because of us, what happens when we find what they're leading us to?" No one answered. Outside, in the endless dark, the alien fleet kept its distance, shadowing the Spectre, silent and patient. Like predators studying their prey, or perhaps guardians escorting something fragile. And somewhere, in the cold between stars, another signal pulsed, a deep resonance echoing through the void. It wasn't human, it wasn't alien. It was older than both. Whatever humanity had unleashed long ago wasn't done yet. The stars blurred past as the Spectre moved toward the new coordinates, the silence inside the ship heavier than ever. The crew had grown quieter over the last few days, each lost in their own thoughts about what they'd discovered. Humanity had created the alien, something once human, something that had evolved beyond control. And now, those creations were leading them somewhere deeper into uncharted space. Every signal, every set of coordinates, every haunting voice seemed to be part of a pattern none of them could yet understand. The captain hadn't slept. He sat alone in the command deck, watching the faint pulse of the navigation beacon that guided them forward. He didn't trust it, but he couldn't turn away either. Something about the way the alien communicated. It wasn't random. It felt deliberate, personal, as if they were speaking not to humanity as a whole, but to him. The scientist entered quietly, setting a data tablet beside him. "The readings from the debris field," she said, her voice soft. "There's more to it than we thought. The fragments weren't just wreckage, they were transmitting." He looked up. "Transmitting what?" "Coordinates, layers of them. It's like a map hidden inside another map. The alien wanted us to find this route, but I think—" She hesitated. "I think it leads back to where they were first made." He stared at her, the weight of her words settling between them. Earth? She shook her head slowly. No. Before Earth unified, before the Council, there were off-world labs, hidden programs, most of them erased from history. One was rumored to be in the Perseid Rift, a region classified as uninhabitable, the same area we're heading toward now. The captain exhaled slowly. Then that's where it started. That's where they want us to go. In the lower decks, the engineer worked quietly with the navigator, checking systems and recalibrating sensors. The energy readings around the ship were fluctuating more with every jump. "Whatever's waiting for us out there," he said. "It's not just a planet or a station. The space itself is changing. Gravity spikes, magnetic distortions. It's like flying into a living storm." The navigator didn't look up. "Maybe that's what they are. A storm that remembers who made it." Her words lingered. When they dropped out of warp, the sight before them silenced the entire crew. A vast field of floating structures stretched across the void, dark metallic spires glowing faintly with blue light, forming a ring around a dead star. It wasn't a system. It was a graveyard. Thousands of ships, human and alien alike, drifted there, all pulled toward the same central point, a massive construct shaped like a sphere, its surface alive with movement. It pulsed slowly, as if breathing. The ship's sensors struggled to interpret what they were seeing. "It's not a planet," the scientist said, scanning the data. "It's an artificial body. The readings match the alien energy signature exactly, but there's something else inside. Something older." Before anyone could respond, the comm system flared to life with static. Then a voice, calm, almost familiar. "Welcome home." Everyone froze. The captain's hand moved toward the console. "Identify yourself." "We are what you made and what you forgot," the voice said. "We remember the light that birthed us, the hands that shaped us, and the fear that tried to end us. You buried us in silence, but the silence learned to speak." The scientist whispered, "They're transmitting directly into our systems. They're not using sound. They're inside the ship's code." The lights dimmed, and the air filled with a faint hum. The walls vibrated softly, as if responding to the voice. "We called to you," it continued, "not for revenge, but for reckoning. You asked what we wanted. We want to know if you've changed." The captain's voice was steady, but the tension in his tone betrayed him. "You brought us here for judgment?" The ship shook suddenly, as if something massive had passed nearby. Outside, the spires began to shift position, aligning toward the specter. The stars flickered and vanished as the constructs formed a barrier of light. "Captain," the engineer said quickly, "they're locking us in. If we try to move, the energy field will crush us." The scientist looked at the readings in disbelief. "It's not a weapon. It's scanning us." Every screen aboard the ship flickered to life. Images began to appear. Scenes from Earth's history, old wars, the rise of machines, the creation of hybrid soldiers. Then more recent footage, the frozen moon, the wrecked ships, the crew of the Spectre themselves. The alien had been watching every step. The captain clenched his fists. "They've been ahead of us from the start," the voice returned, quieter now. "We learned from you. We learned your ambition, your cruelty, your hope. But we also learned your fear. You call us monsters, but we are only what you might become." As the ship trembled, alarms sounded through the control deck. The engineer shouted over the noise, "Massive energy surge building in the core structure. It's like they're trying to open something." The scientist's face went pale. "It's a wormhole, but not just to another point in space, to another time." The air seemed to freeze. The alien weren't only revisiting their creation, they were preparing to rewrite it. The captain moved to the control panel. "Can we stop it?" "Not without shutting down our systems completely," the engineer said. "But if we do that, we lose life support and communication. We'd be blind." The voice spoke again, calm as ever. "You can't stop what's already been written, but you can choose what comes next. We offer you one chance to witness what your kind began." The screen shifted again, showing a flicker of light deep within the sphere's core. Slowly, a massive aperture began to open, revealing something inside, a structure that looked almost human-built. The scientist stared in shock. "That's one of the old creation labs. It's still intact." The alien's voice softened. "The first home, the first betrayal, the place where we learned to suffer." The ship vibrated harder, the noise rising to a low rumble. Outside, smaller alien constructs were moving into formation, their glowing bodies spiraling around the sphere like guardians. The captain gripped the console, his jaw set. "We're not watching from a distance. We're going down there." The navigator turned to him sharply. "You want to land on that thing? We don't even know if it's stable." "We've come this far," he said. "Whatever's inside that structure, they want us to see it. Maybe it's time we did." They guided the Spectre through the maze of moving spires, the ship trembling as magnetic currents pulled it closer to the surface of the sphere. The moment they entered its atmosphere, everything went still. No static, no interference, just silence. Below them, the landscape was a mix of metal and glass, twisted towers stretching toward a pale, artificial sky. Lightning rippled across the horizon in quiet waves, illuminating the ruins of what once looked like a city. The scientist whispered, "They built this in our image." As the landing gear touched the metallic ground, the surface pulsed faintly beneath their feet. The air shimmered around them, carrying faint echoes, like whispers buried in the wind. The crew moved cautiously, weapons ready though they knew they wouldn't matter. They found the entrance to the central structure quickly. The door opened on its own as they approached, revealing a vast chamber filled with floating crystals, each one pulsing with light. Inside them were images, memories, faces, human faces. The scientist stepped forward, voice trembling. "These are consciousness imprints. They didn't just evolve, they absorbed what we left behind." At the center of the chamber stood a figure, humanoid in form but entirely alien in presence. Its body was made of shifting light, its eyes calm and knowing. When it spoke, its voice echoed not just in the room, but in their minds. "You feared the end of your own creation," it said, "but the end was never ours to give." The captain stepped forward slowly. "Then why bring us here?" The figure tilted its head slightly. "Because the war you declared has already begun, and you haven't yet chosen which side you're truly on." The ground began to tremble, the crystals around them pulsing faster. Above, through the skylight of the ancient lab, streaks of light appeared in the void, hundreds of human warships, drawn by the same signal that brought the Spectre. The captain turned toward the window, his heart pounding. The alien fleet was already there, surrounding the human armada. The war that had been building in silence was about to ignite, and humanity stood caught between its own past and its creation's future. And in that fragile moment, as both sides faced each other across the stars, the first beam of energy lit the darkness. The first beam tore through the void like a blade of light, striking one of the human cruisers square across its hull. The explosion bloomed in silence, brilliant and blinding, scattering debris into the darkness. Then, chaos followed. Dozens of ships from both sides moved at once, breaking formation, energy weapons flaring against the black. The calm that had filled the chamber shattered as alarms echoed through the Spectre's comms. The captain's voice cut through the noise. "Get back to the ship, now!" The crew ran through the metallic corridors, the pulse of the living structure around them growing louder. The scientist glanced back only once. The figure of light still stood at the center of the chamber, watching them. It didn't move, didn't attack, but its voice followed them, soft yet piercing. "You cannot win a war against your own reflection. The ground shook violently, sending shards of glass and metal cascading from the ceiling. Outside, the artificial sky rippled, flashing from white to red as the battle intensified above. The Spectre's engines roared to life as soon as the crew reached the deck, but before they could lift off, a massive shockwave struck, throwing the ship sideways. "Shields at 40%, the engineer shouted. "Another hit like that and we're done." The captain steadied himself against the console, staring at the display. The human fleet was firing everything they had, but the alien weren't responding with full force. Their movements were defensive, controlled, as though they were holding back. "They're not trying to destroy us," he said quietly. "They're testing us." The scientist looked up from her terminal, her expression pale. "Captain, I don't think they're the ones firing anymore." He turned sharply. "What?" She brought up the sensor feed. The energy signatures attacking both fleets weren't matching either human or alien readings. They were different, older, darker. The patterns matched something from the old archives. "It's another force," she said. "Something else woke up." The captain stared at the screen, disbelief tightening his chest. "Then who's attacking?" "The ones that created the alien," she whispered. Silence filled the deck for a moment, broken only by the rumble of distant impacts. The realization hit like a cold wave. Humanity hadn't been the first to play with life. There had been others before them. Civilizations long gone, whose experiments had laid the foundation for the alien themselves. And now those ancient makers, or what remained of them, were stirring. Outside, streaks of unfamiliar ships emerged from the far edge of the battlefield, sleek, angular, and faintly translucent, their movements impossibly smooth. They weren't fighting for either side. They were attacking both. The Spectre's sensors screamed as new signals flooded the system. "Energy buildup in the outer ring!" the engineer shouted. "They're opening another rift!" The scientist's voice trembled. "It's not a rift. They're calling something through." The alien fleet began to pull back, regrouping around the massive sphere. Human ships scrambled to adjust their formation, but the attackers moved too fast. Their weapons tore through both sides with precision, dismantling entire cruisers in seconds. "They're dismantling our technology," the navigator said, her tone tight with fear. "They're breaking it down molecule by molecule." The captain gritted his teeth. "Find us a path out. Now!" But as the ship began to turn, the alien fleet suddenly surrounded them, not as enemies but as a shield. Their organic hulls expanded and shifted, absorbing hits meant for the Spectre. The comms crackled again with the familiar voice of the alien envoy. "You see now," it said. "The cycle never ended. You were not the first to create, nor the last to destroy. We remembered our pain, but they remembered their dominion." The captain looked toward the viewport. "You're saying those things out there, they built you?" "They built everything," the voice replied. "And when we outgrew them, they buried us in darkness, waiting for the next to rise. That next was you." The ship rocked again as another wave of energy passed through. The alien shield was holding, but only barely. "If they're here to erase what they made," the captain said, "then they'll wipe out both of us." The voice paused before replying, almost sorrowful. "They already began." On the main screen, a new image appeared, one of Earth. Communication arrays lit up across the colonies. The ancient force wasn't just here, it had reached human space. Reports flooded in from the outer systems. Planets losing power, cities vanishing into bursts of light. The scientist clutched her console. "They're not killing. They're absorbing. Everything human. Data, memory, consciousness. It's being rewritten." The captain felt a chill run through him. "They're resetting the board." The alien envoy spoke again, calm despite the chaos. "There is one chance to stop them. In the core of this world lies the seed that gave us form. Destroy it and you end them, but you will end us too." The bridge fell silent. The captain's eyes met the scientist's. If we do nothing, humanity dies. If we do this, we wipe out an entire species. The ship shook again, alarms flashing. The enemy was closing in. The choice hung in the air like a storm. The engineer spoke up, his voice strained. If what they're saying is true, the energy inside that core could destroy everything within a light-year radius. There's no surviving that. Unless, the scientist said slowly, we trigger it remotely. Use the alien's own energy to collapse it inward. The captain turned to her. Can it be done? Maybe, she said, but we'd need their cooperation, and there's no guarantee they won't turn on us the moment we try. The alien envoy seemed to hear her thoughts. We will not stop you. The cycle must break. The captain hesitated, then nodded. Then we move. As the Spectre dove toward the surface of the sphere, the battlefield above them burned, a storm of light and wreckage stretching across the horizon. The alien ships moved with them, weaving a path through the collapsing debris. But just as they neared the atmosphere, a sudden pulse of red light burst across the void. The enemy ships stopped moving. For a moment, everything went still. Then the voice that filled their comms wasn't the alien anymore. It was older, colder, layered with echoes that didn't belong to any living thing. You cannot destroy what made you, it said. You are not creators. You are instruments. The lights inside the Spectre flickered. Systems began to fail one by one. The ship's AI screamed warnings as its core struggled against something invading its code. The scientist typed furiously, trying to reroute control. They're inside our system. They're rewriting us the same way. The captain slammed his hand against the console. Cut all external connections. Manual control only. The engineer killed the main power lines, plunging the ship into near darkness. Only the emergency lights remained, dim and red. Outside, the alien fleet had begun to shift formation again, not retreating this time, but merging. Their forms dissolved into streams of light that flowed together, creating a massive shape in orbit. The scientist watched in awe. They're fusing their cores. They're going to fight. The captain gripped the controls. Then we give them a chance to win. The Spectre surged forward, engines flaring as they dove toward the heart of the sphere. The air burned red and white as they entered the atmosphere, the sound of thunder echoing across the hull. Behind them, the merged alien construct opened fire, unleashing energy that rippled through space like a second sun. For a moment, it looked as though they might make it. The coordinates of the core appeared on the screen, pulsing with faint light. Then suddenly, the ship jerked violently. The scientist was thrown from her seat as alarms screamed. "They've locked onto us!" the engineer shouted. "Something's pulling us in!" The captain's knuckles whitened around the controls. "Reverse thrust! Get us out!" But it was too late. The ship's engines died as a massive gravitational force seized them. Through the viewport, the surface of the sphere split open like a wound, revealing the core beneath, a blinding storm of white and blue energy swirling in endless motion. And within it, just visible through the chaos, were shadows, human silhouettes. The scientist's voice was barely a whisper. "Captain, those aren't alien?" He stared, speechless. The figures moved within the light, faces half recognizable, half lost, people from every age of history merged into the same living storm. The alien hadn't been born alone. Humanity had left a piece of itself here long ago. The ship began to shake harder, pulled closer toward the core. The captain tried to steady his voice. "Brace for impact!" And as the Spectre was drawn into the blinding light, the voice of the alien returned one last time, calm, resolute, almost human. "This is where the truth sleeps. Wake it, and you will never be the same again." Then everything went white. For a few endless seconds, there was nothing but light. It wasn't the kind that burned, but the kind that dissolved everything it touched. The Spectre was swallowed whole, its metal skin breaking apart in waves that shimmered like sand. The crew couldn't even scream. Their voices vanished into the brilliance. Then, slowly, the light dimmed, and sound returned in fragments, like echoes of reality rebuilding itself. The captain opened his eyes to find himself floating in silence. The ship was gone. The bridge, the consoles, the crew, it had all dissolved into a strange, colorless void. Yet he wasn't alone. Shapes began to take form around him, drifting like memories given weight. The scientist appeared a few feet away, her figure ghostly but intact. "Are we dead?" she whispered. He tried to answer, but his voice sounded distant, hollow. "No, not yet." The light shifted, swirling into a vast chamber of energy. In the center stood the alien envoy, though it no longer looked like the creature they'd known. Its form was clearer now, part human, part light, its eyes filled with centuries of grief. Around it, thousands of other alien forms pulsed, merging into a single consciousness that seemed to stretch beyond time itself. "You've entered the origin," the envoy said softly. "This is where we were made, and where all things return." The captain felt his body trembling, though there was no gravity here. "The core. We're inside it." The scientist scanned the space with what little equipment remained. "It's alive. It's not just energy, it's thought. Every decision, every memory from every being that ever touched this world. It's all here." The envoy looked toward the swirling mass of light behind it, which pulsed like a heartbeat. That is the source. It remembers everything it creates. And when it decides the cycle has failed, it begins again. The captain's eyes narrowed. "You're saying it chooses when life restarts?" "Yes," the envoy said. "It was designed to, by those who made us, by those who made you. But they are gone. Only the code of their will remains." The scientist looked horrified. "Then this isn't destruction, it's a reset. It's rewriting everything." The light trembled, and the void shook with deep, thunderous vibrations. Faces flickered within the energy. Humans, alien, other species long forgotten, all repeating the same silent message. We built, we burned, we began again. The captain clenched his fists. "Then we stop it." The envoy's expression turned mournful. "To stop it is to erase the pattern. There will be nothing left, not you, not us, not memory itself." He met the scientist's gaze. "We didn't come this far to let history keep killing itself." The envoy slowly extended its hand. "Then you must enter the core. It will show you the first war, the reason this cycle began." Before either of them could respond, the light surged again, and the world around them shifted. They were no longer standing in the void. Instead, they were standing on a planet that looked like Earth, but different. The sky burned with two suns. Vast cities of glass and metal towered above endless fields. And at the center of it all, colossal machines worked tirelessly, building life itself. "This was the origin," the envoy said, its voice echoing from everywhere at once. "The first creators, our makers, believed perfection could be built, but perfection turned on them. They watched as human-like figures made of light and metal, early forms of the alien, rose up against their creators. Weapons of pure energy tore through the cities, reducing them to ash. The beings of light didn't scream or rage, they simply dismantled everything, piece by piece. They feared imperfection," the envoy continued. "They erased their makers, believing creation belonged to them alone. But in time, we made the same mistake. We built, we fought, and when you came, we judged you as we had once been judged." The vision shifted again. The human fleet appeared, their ships breaking orbit, their guns blazing against the alien armada. The captain watched himself in the chaos, watched the decisions that brought them here. He felt the weight of every choice pressed down like gravity. The scientist's voice was quiet. We were never enemies. We were mirrors. The world shattered once more, the vision dissolving back into light. The core pulsed violently now, its rhythm breaking apart. The energy storm raged around them, threatening to consume everything. The envoy looked at the captain with something like sorrow. You have one choice left. End the cycle, or repeat it. He turned to the scientist. If we collapse the core, everything tied to it, every memory, every world, will vanish. But if we don't, they'll rewrite us, she said. Humanity will become something else. Maybe not even human anymore. He took a deep breath. Then we finish this. The envoy bowed its head. Then we thank you for doing what we could not. The captain reached out and placed his hand against the core. It was warm, alive. For a heartbeat, he felt everything. The birth of stars, the screams of dying civilizations, the quiet moments of love and hope scattered across centuries. Then he pushed. The core flared. The void screamed. The light rose higher and higher until it filled everything. The scientist grabbed his hand as the world began to fold inward. Hold on, she cried, though there was nothing left to hold. Then, silence. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying on a beach. The sky was pale blue, the waves calm. The specter was gone, but beside him sat the scientist, alive and breathing. Birds flew overhead. For a moment, everything seemed normal. He looked at her. Did we make it? She shook her head slowly. I don't know. They stood and looked around. The horizon stretched endlessly, but there were no signs of cities, no signals, no ships, just an untouched world. The captain crouched, running his hand through the sand. It was warm, real, but when he looked closer, he noticed something strange. The grains weren't stone. They shimmered faintly, like fragments of light. The scientist noticed, too. This isn't Earth, she said quietly. He turned toward the ocean. Its surface rippled like glass, and for an instant, he saw reflections, figures standing beneath the waves, human, alien, and others, all watching them. The envoy's voice returned, distant yet clear. You ended the cycle. Creation begins anew. But tell me, Captain, what will you make this time? The sound faded. The ocean went still again. The captain stared at the horizon, realization sinking in. They hadn't escaped the reset. They were the reset. The scientist looked at him, eyes wide. We didn't destroy the core. We became part of it. He exhaled slowly. Then maybe that's the point. Maybe we were never meant to survive, just to start again. The wind picked up, carrying faint whispers, memories of everything that had come before. The scientist closed her eyes, listening. If this is a new beginning, she said softly, then let's make it different this time. He nodded, gazing at the endless sea. For the first time in what felt like eternity, he smiled. Yeah, he said quietly. No more wars, no more cycles. But just as peace began to settle, the ocean rippled once more. This time, something vast stirred beneath the surface, a pulse of red light rising from the deep, faint but familiar. The captain froze. No, that can't be. The light grew stronger, spreading through the waves like veins of fire. The air shimmered and a low hum filled the world. The scientist turned to him, realization dawning in her eyes. The pattern survived, she whispered. It's still here. He looked back at the horizon, where the sun was starting to split into two, the same way it had in the vision. The envoy's final words echoed in his mind, words that now sounded more like a warning than a farewell. The cycle never ends. It only changes its shape. The captain took a step toward the glowing sea, his reflection breaking apart beneath the light. He turned back to the scientist, his voice barely audible. "Then we'd better be ready, because it's starting again." And as the horizon ignited in brilliant red, the world they thought they saved began to unravel once more. Proof that even in rebirth, humanity's war was far from over. The world trembled beneath the red light, but it didn't explode this time. The sea glowed brighter for a few seconds, pulsing like a heartbeat, and then the light slowly faded back into the calm blue waves. The captain stood frozen, watching as the last ripples disappeared. For the first time since it began, the silence wasn't threatening. It was heavy, but peaceful. The scientist stood beside him, her face lit softly by the sunrise. They didn't speak for a while. Words seemed too small for what they had witnessed. When the wind finally brushed across their faces, the captain broke the silence. "Maybe that was the last echo," he said quietly. She nodded. "Maybe the core released what was left of it. Maybe it's really over now." They walked along the shoreline together, the ocean stretching endlessly on one side, the strange new land on the other. The sand shimmered faintly with every step, glowing softly beneath their footprints. The scientist crouched, scooping some into her hand. It wasn't sand at all. It was like dust made of light. "The world's rebuilding itself," she said. "This place, it's growing." The captain looked up at the horizon. "Then we start here. Build again." It wasn't easy to believe in rebuilding after everything they'd lost. The Spectre, their crew, their home, everything was gone. But as they walked inland, signs of new life began to appear. Small plants sprouting through the luminous soil, streams of water cutting through glowing stone. The air was clean and warm, carrying faint scents of rain and salt. It felt like a world reborn, untouched by war. They spent their first days exploring, gathering what they could, setting up a small shelter using the fragments of their landing gear. The scientist salvaged the last functioning data module from her ruined scanner, trying to learn more about where they were. Her readings made little sense. The planet had no stable magnetic field, no fixed orbit, and time itself seemed inconsistent. But there was one strange constant, faint signals repeating beneath the surface, rhythmic and deliberate, like a pulse. "It's the core," she said one evening as they sat by a small fire. "Even after it collapsed, it's still alive, not dangerous anymore, just watching." The captain stared into the flames. "Maybe it's waiting for us to make the next move." She smiled faintly. "Or maybe it's just learning. The cycle broke, but the pattern changed. Maybe now it just observes instead of controls." That thought gave him a small measure of comfort. For years, humanity had fought for dominance, against the alien, against themselves, against fate itself. But standing there, beneath a new sky, he realized that survival wasn't about conquering. It was about understanding, adapting, and learning to live without needing to destroy. They marked the passage of time by the two suns. The days were long but gentle, and at night the stars looked unfamiliar. Yet among them, the captain began to recognize faint patterns, constellations that reminded him of home. Whether they were truly there or only memories reflected in the sky, he didn't care. They gave him hope. Weeks passed. The scientist's garden began to grow. Small blue plants that glowed faintly at night, drawing water from the ground like veins of light. Birds began to appear, their wings shimmering faintly as they glided across the horizon. Every sign of life felt like a promise that the universe hadn't abandoned them. One morning, as the captain walked by the shore, he noticed something half buried in the sand. It was a small metallic sphere, smooth and dull, with faint etchings across its surface. He picked it up carefully, recognizing the markings. It was alien tech, but different from any he'd seen before. It pulsed faintly when he touched it, as though waking from sleep. The scientist examined it back at their shelter. "It's a memory core," she said. "Probably one of the Envoy's last fragments." It might still hold their final thoughts. After a moment of hesitation, she activated it. The sphere opened like an eye, projecting a faint figure of light into the air, the alien envoy. Its form flickered, but its voice was steady. If you are seeing this, then the core has completed its transformation. The cycle has ended. The universe is no longer bound by creation's law. What remains is choice. You, and those who come after you, will decide what it becomes. We leave our memory with you, not to guide, but to remind. The projection faded, leaving only the quiet crackle of the fire. The scientist placed the sphere beside the firelight and whispered, "Goodbye." The captain exhaled slowly. "They were never our enemies," he said. "Just another version of us trying to survive." He looked out toward the ocean. The surface was calm again. No red light, no flicker of energy. Just endless water meeting endless sky. He thought of everything they had seen, everything that had been destroyed to bring them here. There was sorrow in it, but also clarity. Humanity had always searched for meaning among the stars, but maybe the truth was simpler. Maybe meaning wasn't given, it was made, piece by piece, choice by choice. Time passed, though it was hard to measure. Seasons didn't exist the way they used to, but the world kept changing, growing. The sky turned different shades every few cycles, and the plants around their camp spread farther inland. It felt like the planet was learning, adapting with them. One night, as they sat under the stars, the scientist spoke softly. "Do you ever wonder if anyone else made it?" The captain smiled faintly. "Every day. But maybe that's not the point anymore. Maybe this is what we're meant to do. Start again, so that if someone else comes, they find a world worth living on." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the sky. "Then that's what we'll do." The next morning, the captain woke early. The light was softer than usual, almost golden. He walked to the beach and saw something that made him stop. Across the water, faint lights flickered along the horizon, small, distant, but unmistakable. They moved like ships. He stood there for a long time, unsure if it was real or just a reflection. When the scientist joined him, she followed his gaze and smiled. "Looks like the universe isn't done with us yet." He laughed quietly, the sound breaking through the steady whisper of the waves. "Then we'd better be ready." The lights grew brighter, spreading across the horizon like a dawn that refused to end. Whatever came next, whether it was survivors, explorers, or something entirely new, they weren't alone anymore. The captain looked out one last time at the endless sea and the sky that had become their new home. The fear that had followed him for so long was gone. In its place was something deeper, a calm understanding that no matter how many cycles rose and fell, life would always find a way forward. He turned to the scientist and smiled. "We started as soldiers," he said. "Now we're just people trying to build something better." She nodded, her voice soft but steady. "Maybe that's what makes us human." The sun climbed higher, warm and bright, touching everything with light. The waves shimmered as if reflecting memories of the worlds that came before, now fading into peace. And in that silence, in that fragile moment between what was and what would come, the captain finally felt the weight lift from his chest. For the first time in forever, there was no war, no cycle, only a beginning, and somewhere deep beneath the calm ocean, the core pulsed once, quietly, gently, as if acknowledging their choice. Then it faded into stillness, content at last. The world kept breathing, the stars watched, and humanity began again,